Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. In my car, as you can see, on the way back from Tottenham after their press conference previewing the Roma game in the Europa League. Ange Postecoglou we spoke to, as well as Destiny Udogie, and quite a lot to talk about from that particular press conference. Top of the shop was the reaction to the devastating news about Guglielmo Vicario, who obviously fractured his ankle against Manchester City in that fantastic performance he put in against City at the Etihad on Saturday, where Tottenham won 4-0 in one of the shock, if not the shock result of the Premier League so far. And Vicario himself put in an unbelievable performance, loads of great saves, made even more remarkable on reflection by the fact that he was playing for an hour with a fractured ankle, had surgery back in his homeland of Italy on Monday, and it's fair to say it came as quite a surprise, not just to Tottenham fans and football fans generally, but also to the club itself, really, given they didn't really quite expect him to be in that kind of position, given he played the whole game. So lots to get into. Let's get into it. Let's start off with Vicario. I'll start with Postecoglou's comments generally, and then get onto a few of Udogie later on. But Postecoglou, he confirmed that it was a big shock to the team because, obviously they noticed he'd gone down when he had that collision with Savinho, had a bit of treatment at the time, but was okay to carry on. Then at half time, there was no doubt apparently that he would carry on from there. And after the game, he felt a bit sore in his ankle, but nothing that would really suggest that he would go on to have such a serious injury. Which would obviously require going under the knife. So big surprise. Ange sort of said, like I've said there, really, the fact that he did manage to play on for 60 minutes with a fractured ankle was outstanding, unbelievable performance. One that he thinks will sort of go down in the history books of great Tottenham performances. He says that, it sort of underlines just how tough and how hard basically Vicario is. He said he's called him tough as nails, tough as anything that any player you'll come across, and I guess that really did underline what a character he was, and what a sort of very, very resolute character he is by being able to play on from that game. He talks about his leadership and I guess what they'll miss from that point of view, and he did confirm that it will be months, not weeks, which is what I wrote the other day. To be fair, I think that was always likely with an injury like that. Obviously, Vicario, being the kind of character he is, we're pushing to come back as soon as he can. But it is one that's going to take a while, unsurprisingly. And Postecoglou confirmed that. He did say that no doubt Vicario, who's quite a big user of Instagram, will no doubt be chronicling all his progress along the way. So one to watch throughout his rehab and as he comes back from a difficult injury. But obviously going forward, whilst Vicario is out, the question mark comes to what do they do in the meantime, which I did the video on the other day. Well, the answer is, particularly in the short term, is they stick with what they've got. He ruled out when I put it to him about the idea of signing a free agent. I did a story in today's paper ahead of the press conference actually that they would be unlikely to dip into the free agent market. To be honest, when you look at the players that are available as free agents, goalkeeper wise, there aren't loads that really stand out. I mean, the sort of headline name probably is Keylor Navas, who's obviously got great pedigree from Real Madrid, PSG, but he's 37 and to be honest he hasn't played for quite a long time, so the idea of just bringing someone in, throwing them straight in, was always going to be unlikely. But Postecoglou did actually rule that out when I actually said, I asked him flat out, will you be looking to sign a free agent? And he said that's not going to happen. I don't think that would be helpful to us. Obviously, Postecoglou has a very defined way of playing. I guess fans will have their own opinions on whether Forster is up to it. But the fact of the matter is that Forster, along with his backups with Austin and Alfie Whiteman, have been training under Postecoglou for a long time, for 18 months now. They know exactly what he wants from his goalkeepers, and the idea of bringing in someone fresh to go right from the beginning, in Postecoglou's eyes, is just not worth it. And you got to also remember when Forster, he signed a new contract a couple of years back in 2023 last year. You got to remember when you're convincing players to sign new contracts, even backup goalkeepers, a lot of the time it's about what you can promise them, or what you can, if not promise, then what you can suggest is likely that they'll get from game time point of view. And one of them will be, if my main guy is injured, I will look to to play you. And so if you don't do that, you go against what you probably committed to in the first place. That can feed into other situations with other players. So it's not surprising that they're going down this route. And remember, Forster, 6 England caps. Yes, he hasn't played much in recent years. In fact, he's only played 4 games in the last 17 months, which is a bit of a worry. He only played 1 game last season. Now, a lot of that was due to the fact that Tottenham hardly had any matches last season beyond the Premier League. Played in that League Cup game against Fulham. They obviously lost on penalties. They weren't in Europe. This year, he's played 3 games. That Coventry game, which, to be honest, he was quite nervy in, given that was his first game in 13 months, probably not surprising. But he was better against Alkmaar, had a mixed game against Galatasaray. So he's played the last 2 Europa League games. So he probably was going to play tomorrow against Roma, of which this is a preview press conference for anyway, and video about. But he said he's ready to go. He's got full faith in him. He says he's known Forster for a long time, so it sounds like his relationship with him might go back before Spurs. And he talks about him being such a strong character. And he also joked because obviously when the Europa League squad was named, he left out Jed Spence and kept Forster in, which was criticised by some fans. But he sort of joked, if I hadn't done that, essentially where would they be now? And they might actually have to go in for a free agent goalkeeper, but he obviously doesn't have to do that now with Forster being in the squad. He was asked a little bit about older keepers adapting to his philosophy of playing out from the back, specifically Joe Hart, because you might have seen an excellent insight from Joe Hart on a video quite recently where he talked about the fact that Ange Postecoglou opened his mind to a new way of playing, really, when he was at Celtic. And I suppose parallels can be drawn with Forster, given they're a similar age and of a similar sort of time where English goalkeepers particularly came through, where playing out from the back was not as big a thing at the start of their careers. And he was interesting on it. He sort of talked about the fact that, yes, I like to play out from the back, which is proven by the lack of long kicks. But if anything, what I like to have my goalkeepers do is basically what they do every day, these short passes that they're normally, by their very profile of being a goalkeeper, pretty good at. They're not particularly risky passes, they're more just short passes, and it's more of a mindset change when it comes to playing out from the back. So he seems pretty confident that Forster, despite maybe not being the most obvious, great player with his feet, compared to the likes of Ederson, it's not really what he's after. I mean, when you think of Ederson, I suppose you think of yes, he's brilliant with the ball at his feet, almost dribbling to a certain extent and playing these little passes, but it's more those amazing sort of diagonal balls or long balls that he plays, which really show what a great player he is with his feet. And that's not actually what Postecoglou wants from his goalkeepers. He just wants them to play these short, sort of consistent, sort of relatively low risk passes. So he seems to be pretty confident that Forster is up to it. I'm aware it's quite dark in here, so I hope you guys can see me. So that was pretty much about Forster and about the goalkeeper situation. But he was also asked about, what about January? Yeah, so maybe not to free transfers now, but what about January? The situation of maybe bringing a new goalkeeper then. And it wasn't like he sort of ruled it out, but I wouldn't say he exactly was emphatic with the idea that they were definitely going to go and sign a goalkeeper in January. I mean, obviously, I think to a certain extent you can always sort of take what managers say publicly in a situation like this with a bit of a pinch of salt. So I don't think that would rule it out. And from what I'm led to believe, the plans that they already had for the end of the season, when Forster's deal will be up, to bring in or look to bring in a new goalkeeper, has been kind of accelerated. So I would not be surprised if they did move for someone in January. But he was sort of saying it sort of depends, and this injury won't change anything. Effectively was his line, but I think that's one to see. So on goalkeepers, that was pretty much it. Obviously, it's a quite a big Europa League game for Tottenham in the context of this league table, which is the first of we've had of it this season. And he was talking about how, so obviously they've got 9 points from a possible 12. A win against Roma at home would really put them in a great position to sort of finish in that top 8, which allows them to go through automatically to the next knockout stages without having to play in February and go straight to March, which actually would have quite a big impact on Vicario, because if he is out for 2 to 3 months, he could be back by then, which would be huge. So he was asked about the importance of getting that win to get through to that particular phase, or put themselves in a good position to get it through to that phase, and he said yes, absolutely. that is very important. He made a joke about having to scroll down on the web page because that table is so long, and how his eyesight is struggles with having to keep scrolling down. So he wants to stay in that top bit. Obviously, he was making a bit of a joke about that, but he talked about the fact that it would be two fewer games if they get through to the knockouts automatically, not having to play in February with 2 games. So really is what he's after. During this Europa League phase. On eyesight, I am just going to turn this light on. Hopefully that will help. I don't know if that helps at all. Maybe that makes it worse. It's just very dark. Let's come around to this side. Hopefully you guys can see me, and apologies for this. It is just that time of year in England with the dark. Another subject that came up was Ben Davies. His option, so there was a bit of news. Jack Pitt-Brooke of The Athletic wrote about this before the press conference, that Tottenham are likely to take up or plan to trigger the option on his contract for another year. My understanding is that is definitely correct. They are planning to do it. He obviously had a fantastic game against Man City. If he completes that, if that year is done and he completes it, that'll be 12 years at the club. So proving what a sort of absolute servant he is for Tottenham, or has been over the years. Postecoglou was just asked, basically, is he kind of underrated and not as sort of well regarded amongst football as what he deserves to be? And he pretty much said no, definitely within football he's definitely respected for what he's achieved. He's the Wales captain, and just sort of praised Ben Davies generally. And then obviously Postecoglou is 59. He's the oldest manager in the Premier League. I'm very aware of this being a very dark video. I imagine I'll get a bit of feedback on that afterwards, but I'm going to carry on anyway. I'm going to power through at this stage. He talked about, so he's obviously the oldest manager in the Premier League. 59 is not that old, but that's just the way the profiles of managers have gone. He's up against someone who's 14 years older in Claudio Ranieri. Yes, Claudio is back at Roma for his 3rd time as Roma manager. And I'll come on to him in a second. But just on Ranieri, Postecoglou said it was unbelievable. It just shows how much he's got the bug for management. He talked about his Leicester side that won the Premier League, and how it's the kind of imprint any manager wants to make on a club, an inspiration in that way. And he's very much looking forward to meeting him. He's never come across Ranieri before. But yeah, Ranieri, 73. So Roma, who Tottenham face, I've been in a bit of dire straits really in the last year or so. Ever since Jose Mourinho left, obviously Mourinho won the Conference League, the first trophy that Roma had won in ages. But then he left, was replaced by Daniel De Rossi, who's an absolute legend of Roma. But he got sacked after 4 games at the start of this season, and the CEO who did that was basically hounded out by the fans for doing that, because he's such a club legend. The replacement who came in, I think it's the Croatian Djuric who came in. He only lasted 12 games. They really struggled. It sounds like recruitment-wise, they've struggled to the point where they had to bring in 2 free agents. Talking about free agents with goalkeepers for Spurs, they ended up bringing in Mats Hummels and Hermoso, the Spanish defender, on free agents in September, because their recruitment was a bit all over the place and injuries had a problem. Like, they were planning to sell Dybala to Saudi Arabia, but he didn't leave, so now they've got a sort of spate of number 10s, and it's just a bit of a disjointed team, and a major issue, I suppose, for Ranieri to sort out. He came in on the 13th, I think, of November. He's had 1 game so far against Antonio Conte's Napoli. They lost 1-0 in that match. This is his 2nd game in charge. But Ranieri, despite having, over in England, I think, we all remember Leicester, we remember Chelsea, but he had such a nightmare at Fulham, where I remember covering them a lot during that period, and Watford, which I'd forgotten about. 17 games he lasted at Fulham, 14 games he lasted at Watford. But I think he's not quite regarded in the same light as he was when he won the title with Leicester in England. But in Italy, it's very different. They still revere him as a fantastic coach, who not only did he obviously did what he did with Leicester and Chelsea, but he came within 2 points of winning the league with Roma back in 2009, I think it was. He saved Sampdoria and Parma from relegation. He's managed pretty much all the big clubs, barring AC Milan. He actually retired in the summer, having got Cagliari, the team that he first managed, up into Serie A and then kept them there. And he was planning on staying retired, but then Roma came calling for his third time as the manager at the club. he's a Roman himself. He's born in Rome. He's a boyhood Roman fan. He played for them briefly as a player. It's in his blood, and he is now back. And it's sort of up to him to turn it around. But it's going to be a tough game against Spurs. I mean, Tottenham look like a much stronger team at the moment, even though we know how consistent they can be. But, apart from Vicario and the centre-backs, because Romero wasn't training again, Mikey Moore wasn't training again today, he's still got a very strong team to pick from, Postecoglou. I'll come on to the side in a minute. Just briefly on Destiny Udogie, he said he sees Vicario as a bit of a big brother. He said that many times. They're obviously compatriots and fellow teammates for the national team. He sort of paid tribute to how hard basically Vicario was to play on like that. But he said Fraser Forster's ready. They train every day. It won't be hard. It'll be easy, actually, he said, for Forster to come in and for the rest of the defence to sort of settle around him. He also talked about Bentancur's ban, saying that they were expecting it in the dressing room but felt that 7 games was a bit heavy, was the word he suggested. Bentancur was obviously back for this game because it's only a domestic ban. He says he's starting to feel physically stronger for Ange's methods over the course of 18 months. Postecoglou has talked about this before in the way that I'm so aware of how dark it is in this video. He's talked before about how his methods can hopefully make players more resilient over time. And Udogie's feeling the benefits of that. He said after that Brighton game, Udogie, that he realised it was a bad game and he had to reset, and he felt like he did that in the international break because he's had a bit of an inconsistent season himself, just like the team. Anyway, on to the match itself. Just finally from the lineup, I would expect Forster obviously in goal, then probably Gray at right back, Dragosin and Davies centre backs. Left back Udogie, mainly because he was up for press, but that doesn't normally mean something. But Porro played the last one, so that's what I would expect. Bentancur back in, obviously, at holding midfield. Then I'd imagine Maddison probably keeps his place after not playing much recently and brilliant at City. Maybe with Bergvall, maybe Kulusevski gets a rest. Johnson, who likely comes back in. Solanke, I guess he'll start with. Lancashire suspended, obviously, Richarlison injured. And then maybe Werner on the left. He apparently is fine, as is Udogie, fitness-wise. So that's what I respect. I'll be doing a video post-Roma. Hopefully it'll be a bit lighter than this. And we'll see where they're at the end of that. At the end of that game. Cheers, guys.